You snapped at your daughter over something so small you cannot even remember what it was by the time she has left the room. A cup left in the wrong place, perhaps, or a question asked at the wrong moment, or a sound that went on slightly too long, and something inside you that should have stayed level simply did not, and the words came out harder than you meant them, sharper than you intended, with an edge that surprised even you. You stand in the silence she has left behind, and you feel something that is becoming very familiar, the specific combination of shame, confusion, and a low-grade bafflement at the person you seem to be becoming. Because this is not who you are, or it is not who you were, and the distance between those two things is something you have been quietly trying to measure for the better part of 2 years. You used to be patient, genuinely, naturally patient, the kind of person who could sit with discomfort without needing to put it somewhere, who could absorb the small irritations of a day without letting them accumulate into something that eventually needed an exit. Now the small irritations do not pass through you, they collect, they compound, and then they find the nearest available person, and they arrive there with a force that is entirely out of proportion to whatever caused them. And the worst part, the part that cost you the most, in the long quiet hours after, is that the people they arrive at are always the ones you love most. You have been trying to explain it to yourself for a long time, and the explanations keep running out before they reach the truth. You told yourself it was the stress of getting older, the accumulated weight of years, the physical discomforts, the losses that had come and not uncome, and there was truth in that, but it did not explain the sharpness, the speed of it, the way it bypassed all your usual filters without warning. You told yourself it was grief, and grief was real, grief was present, grief was doing things inside you that you had not fully mapped, but grief felt like sadness, like absence, like weight, and this felt like heat, like pressure, like something looking for a way out. You told yourself it was just who you were becoming, that this was what age did, that it narrowed people, made them harder at the edges, and this was the explanation that frightened you most, because if it was true then there was nothing to be done about it. Nobody had ever told you that testosterone levels in men drop significantly after 60, that this quiet hormonal shift affects not just energy and strength, but mood, patience, emotional regulation, and the brain's ability to manage stress, because nobody talks about this, because men are not supposed to need their hormones explained to them, because the whole subject carries a weight of embarrassment that keeps it from being discussed in the rooms where it needs to be discussed most. So you carried it alone, the way men of your generation were taught to carry things quietly without complaint, without asking for the explanation you deserved. It is a Sunday lunch, the whole family around the table, and everything is fine until it is not. Your grandson, 6 years old, loud and cheerful, and completely unaware of the careful internal management you have been doing all morning, knocks his glass over, and the juice spreads across the tablecloth, and everyone moves to help, and the noise level spikes for just a moment. And you react. Not violently, not terribly, but sharply enough, with enough edge in your voice, that the table goes briefly quiet, and your grandson looks at you with those 6-year-old eyes that do not yet know how to hide what they feel. He is not hurt. You have not hurt him, not really, but the look on his face, the brief unguarded confusion of it, goes through you like a cold key turning in a lock. The lunch continues. Someone makes a joke. Someone refills the glasses. Your grandson is laughing again within minutes, the way children mercifully are, but something in you does not continue. Something in you has stopped at that look and is not moving on until it has understood it. That evening, alone in your chair, you said something to yourself that you had been a long time arriving at. I need to understand what is happening to me, because the people I love should not have to manage it with me. Your doctor listened to you in a way that doctors do not always listen, all the way through, without interrupting, without reaching for the prescription pad before you had finished, and when you were done, he said something that rearranged several things inside you at once. He said, what you are describing is not a character change, it is a chemistry change, and chemistry is something we can actually look at. The blood work came back within the week, and the numbers told a story that your behavior had been trying to tell for 2 years without the vocabulary to do it. Testosterone significantly below the range for your age. Cortisol chronically elevated, the two in a relationship with each other, that your doctor explained as a slow and self-reinforcing cycle of stress and depletion. He explained that when testosterone drops and cortisol rises, the brain's ability to regulate emotional response changes in specific and predictable ways, the threshold for irritability lowers, the recovery time after stress lengthens, and the feelings that a healthy hormonal system would process and release instead accumulate and look for exits. He told you that this was not inevitable, not permanent, and not something you were required to simply absorb and apologize for indefinitely, that there were both medical and lifestyle approaches that had genuine measurable effects on the hormonal balance that was driving what you had been experiencing. He talked about sleep, the single most powerful regulator of testosterone and cortisol in the body, the thing that every other intervention depended on working, and he asked you carefully and specifically how you had been sleeping. He talked about resistance exercise, not the gym, not anything dramatic, but the simple act of asking your muscles to work against weight 2 or 3 times a week, because muscle activity is one of the most direct signals the body receives to produce testosterone at any age. And he talked about sunlight, morning light, specifically the first 30 minutes of the day spent outside or near a window, because morning light resets the cortisol rhythm at its source and begins the day's hormonal cycle in the correct order rather than in chaos. He said, these are not cures, but they are the conditions under which your brain can begin to regulate itself again, and that regulation is what has been missing. The first change you made was the sleep, the screens off, the room dark, the 30 minutes of quiet before bed that felt almost uncomfortably slow at first, like learning to drive with your hands at 10 and 2 when you had been driving with one wrist draped over the wheel for years. The second was the morning light, just stepping outside with his coffee, 10 minutes, the same time every day, letting the early sun do what early sun apparently knows how to do without being asked. The third was the resistance work, 2 mornings a week, in the living room, with a set of light hand weights and a routine simple enough to remember without writing it down, and he felt foolish doing it for the first week and then forgot to feel foolish because he was too busy noticing that something was changing. The change was not loud. It did not arrive with a moment, a revelation, a day you could point to. It arrived the way light arrives in a room when someone has been slowly, gradually turning up a dimmer switch that you had not noticed being turned down. The threshold was higher, the small irritations were passing through rather than collecting, and the space between stimulus and response, that crucial fraction of a second in which a person gets to decide who they are going to be, was coming back. 3 months after that Sunday lunch, you had the family over again. Same table, same noise, same grandchildren, at the same volume that children always are, and at some point during the meal, your grandson knocked something over again, because he is 6 and 6-year-olds knock things over, and you handed him a napkin, and you helped him clean it up and you moved on. You did not snap, you did not feel the spike, you did not spend the afternoon in the familiar aftermath of shame, you just handed him the napkin, and it was fine, and you were fine, and the meal was fine. You are still the same man, with the same years in you, the same losses, the same weight that a long life accumulates, but the man and his chemistry are working together again rather than against each other, and the difference is everything. And if you are sitting somewhere right now, replaying an outburst, counting the people who got too much of something that was never meant for them, wondering quietly if this is simply who you are now, I want you to hear this clearly. It is not who you are. It is what your chemistry has been doing without the right conditions to work properly, and the right conditions are closer than you think and simpler than you have been led to believe. Sleep, light, movement, 3 things, every day, and the man you have always been will have the conditions he needs to come back. If this story felt like yours, hit subscribe. Every week there is a new one, and someone out there needs to hear it.